For this lesson, we're going to be looking at water transport in plants. Now, within individual cells, water is transported by osmosis. But in an entire plant, water must be transported over much larger distances. Now, how large are we talking about? A redwood tree can grow to over 100 meters tall, the length of a football field. But these plants have no heart or other device to pump water that high. So let's get into how all this works. The two key things are water is first pushed into the tree through the roots, and then water is pulled upwards as water escapes through the stomata in the leaves. So water's pushed up from the soil into the roots, and then is pulled up by transpiration. The pushing by the roots is called root pressure. Minerals from the soil enter the root through either facilitated diffusion or active transport, with root hairs vastly increasing the surface area for absorption. Water follows those minerals via osmosis and then pushes up the xylem. This push factor, or root pressure, only accounts for about 1 to 2 meters though. In rare cases, maybe up to 7 meters. So really, it's the transpiration pull that does most of the water transport. But the root pressure is important for bringing water from the soil into the xylem of the plant. Now the xylem. After entering the xylem via root pressure, water and other dissolved minerals are transported to the leaves up through the xylem. Pretty interestingly, in a mature plant, most xylem cells are actually dead. All that's left of the cells are the cell walls. And those cells are linked end to end, forming long continuous tubes, kind of like straws, and we call those the xylem vessels. Now, importantly, as water travels through the xylem, it does so in a continuous column. So all the water molecules are attached to each other in the xylem. Now, why is that the case? Recall that water has special properties. Water molecules like to stick to each other. That's called cohesion. And also water molecules like to stick to other things. That's called adhesion. In plants, this means that when water travels up the xylem, it travels in continuous columns with no gaps between the water molecules. Now, on to the big factor in water transport, the transpiration pull. We know that water travels along the xylem in a continuous column, and then when water molecules evaporate through the stoma in the leaves, they'll pull up the chain of water molecules beneath it, since those water molecules are attached due to cohesion. So the water is all attached here in a continuous column, so that when one water molecule evaporates out of the stoma, it pulls up all the water molecules beneath it, because those water molecules are linked together or attached to each other, kind of like a chain. So this is the second part of transport within a plant, the transporting of sugar. While water is transported up the plant in the xylem, sugar is transported down the plant by the phloem. So, a little bit about the phloem. It consists of cells called sieve tube elements. These are joined together, separated by sieve tube plates, to form long continuous tubes, perfect for transport. Next to sieve tube elements are what's called companion cells. So for each sieve tube element, there's going to be a companion cell. What do the companion cells do? Well, the sieve tube elements, the guys that make up the long tubes, they specialize in moving substances, so they're made for transport. They have little on the inside, so they can keep substances moving. So unlike most cells, they have little cytoplasm, no nucleus, and few other organelles. Companion cells make up for that lack of organelles by carrying out metabolic processes for the sieve tube elements and, importantly, loading sugar into those cells, sugar that's produced by the leaf. Okay, so that sugar that's produced by the leaf, how does it get to the other areas of the plant? Now, you may notice that the plants are transporting sucrose, but that glucose is the product of photosynthesis. Just know that plants convert that glucose into sucrose for transport. Okay, so let's look at sugar transport, also known as translocation, and we'll look at it in 4 main steps. So we know the leaf creates the sugar or produces the sugar, and that will actively transport sucrose into the phloem with the help of the companion cells. What that does is it's going to increase the concentration of solute in the phloem. Remember, the phloem and the xylem are right next to each other. So, with that increased solute concentration, the phloem is now hypertonic, or the solution in the phloem is now hypertonic to that of the xylem. So water is going to move into the phloem from the xylem by osmosis. Now, with all that water and sugar solution here that we call the phloem sap, all that fluid pressure forces that phloem sap to flow down the plant and into neighboring cells. The fluid pressure continues to force the sugar solution all the way down the plant, where the sugars are actively transported to the roots, and then water would flow back to the xylem by osmosis. Okay, so that was a brief overview of water and sugar transport in plants. Be sure to read pages 331 to 340 in your textbook for further detail. Make sure to write down some notes with diagrams. That's going to help you digest the material better. And also complete questions 1 to 7 on page 340 of your textbook and check your answers with the solutions I posted online. Thanks all. We'll have one more lesson in this biology unit before we move on to the physics unit. Thanks again.